They called him Possum. But beneath the nickname, beneath the boots and rhinestones, beneath the heartbreak ballads and Opry appearances, there was something broken, something haunted. This is not just the story of a singer. This is the story of a voice that came from somewhere beyond pain, a voice that bent notes like they were made of flesh, a voice that made grown men weep and women leave their husbands. And that voice came with a price. George Glenn Jones was not just the greatest singer in country music. He was its most tragic son. While other artists went platinum, George went missing. While others wrote love songs, he lived them until they burned him alive. He was a man who could barely speak without trembling until he sang. This is the story of what that voice cost him. They were country's royal couple, George Jones and Tammy Wynette. But if you think this was a fairy tale, you haven't heard the full record. When they met, she was the first lady of country music, Tammy of Stand By Your Man fame. And George? He was already a legend, and already crumbling. They recorded together, toured together, and fought like no two people ever should. George, addicted to alcohol and spiraling into cocaine and pills, would disappear for days. Tammy would lock herself in hotel rooms, pray, cry, and then take the stage anyway. They sang love songs to each other, even when they weren't speaking off stage. By the time they divorced, they had created some of the most gut-wrenching duets in country history. Songs like Golden Ring that told the story of their own rise and ruin. And yet they never really let go, not even decades later. Chapter 2, Nashville and the Needle, 9-14. George Jones wasn't just addicted to alcohol. He was addicted to silence, to escaping, to anything that helped him disappear. And Nashville, the very town that made him a star, gave him all the tools. In the 70s and 80s, George's reputation for missing shows became legendary. It earned him a new nickname, No Show Jones. He'd get booked to perform at a packed arena and not show up. No warning, no explanation. Sometimes he'd be found miles away, drunk and barefoot. Sometimes no one found him at all. One promoter offered cash in a brown envelope just to get him on stage. Another said, "George doesn't run on time, he runs on emotion." And when he did show up, he'd sing like an angel. But the angels weren't enough to save him. The music industry didn't just watch George self-destruct, it enabled him. He'd show up to recording sessions 3 days late, voice hoarse, hands shaking, and producers would still roll tape. Why? Because what he gave them could not be duplicated. His recording of He Stopped Loving Her Today is proof. George hated the song, thought it was too slow, too sad. He slurred through the first takes, missed notes, nearly walked out. But then something happened, something clicked. And what came out of that microphone was not just a hit, it was the greatest country song of all time. It won awards, saved his career, became a funeral staple, a legend. But it didn't save George. People used to say George didn't sing songs, he became them. He'd close his eyes, grip the mic, and lose himself in the lyrics. Fans would swear he was crying. Sometimes he was. He wasn't acting. He wasn't performing. He was bleeding. One journalist said, "When George Jones sings about heartbreak, you don't feel like you're listening to a story. You feel like you're watching someone have a breakdown." He had a unique ability to bend syllables, to slide into sorrow, to hold pain in a note just long enough to make it unbearable. And the more his life fell apart, the better he sang. It was beautiful, and it was brutal. He nearly died in 1980, found talking to himself on the side of a highway, drunk, confused, cold. And yet he kept coming back. He got sober, then relapsed, got married again, then nearly drove his wife away. It became a cycle. Then in the 1990s, something strange happened. George grew old, and with age came clarity. He wrote a memoir, opened up about the trauma of his childhood, about his father's abuse, about the demons he could never shake. And for the first time in decades, and he stayed clean, he recorded a final batch of songs, performed for smaller audiences, and he sang, not like he was dying, but like he had something left to give. In his later years, George Jones traded chaos for clarity, or at least tried to. Gone were the wild tours, the hotel room breakdowns, the disappearances. In their place, something new: discipline. In 1999, George Jones made a quiet but profound comeback with the album Cold Hard Truth. The title was no accident. That same year, he crashed his SUV near his Tennessee home. The wreck nearly killed him, but he survived, barely. And from that wreck came his most powerful late-career song, Choices. I've had choices since the day that I was born. There were voices that told me right from wrong. It was a confession, a reckoning, a final breath of honesty. Nashville and then fans across America finally began to forgive him, not because he apologized, but because he admitted what he was: a man with choices and consequences. George Jones never needed a comeback single. He was the comeback. Every time the industry left him for dead, he returned with a voice even more worn and weathered, and even more powerful. He was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1992, standing beside the very industry that had both broken and embraced him. He received the National Medal of Arts in 2002. He won a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 2012. By then, younger artists had begun calling him what he always was: the best there ever was. Alan Jackson once said, "When you hear George Jones, you hear country music as it's supposed to be." Others like Vince Gill, Randy Travis, even Dolly, openly wept when singing tributes to him. He was no longer the punchline of No-Show Jones. He was the blueprint. George Jones gave his final concert on November 22, 2012, in Knoxville, Tennessee. He was 81 years old. His voice had grown thin, but not weak, fragile, but full of wisdom, like a ghost visiting his own songs. He closed with, "He Stopped Loving Her Today," and the room, packed with generations of fans, fell completely silent. Not a single phone screen in the air, not a single whisper, just George, one last time. On April 26, 2013, George Jones died at Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Nashville. His death wasn't sudden, but it still shocked the country world. Thousands poured into the Grand Ole Opry House for his funeral. Alan Jackson, wearing a simple black suit, performed "He Stopped Loving Her Today." And the line, "He stopped loving her today," they placed a wreath upon his door, meant more than it ever had. The wreath was real, the door was now closed. The possum was gone. Today, George Jones lives on in every voice that trembles through heartbreak. You can hear him in Chris Stapleton's roar, in Cody Johnson's rasp, in the silence that falls between lyrics in a good country ballad. His story isn't just about music. It's about pain, redemption, and what it means to leave something behind that even death can't erase. Because when George Jones sang, he didn't just perform a song, he left a scar on it, and those scars still sing. Thanks for watching today's video. If you liked it, don't forget to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button. Be sure to leave a comment, who should we make new video about?